next debate this evening is for the Assembly 16th District. And we have Miss, where am I? Let me get all my papers here. Miss Sillitti, and Mr. Jha. Okay. Again, what we will do is give each of the candidates 2 minutes for an opening statement. They've drawn lots. Ms. Sillitti, is first, and Mr. Jha second, and at the very end, we'll do the same thing. We'll try to cover some ground. We have different questions for the assembly seats, and you will have 90 seconds, a minute and a half for each question. There are no rebuttals. We've asked the timers to keep the 90-second sign up so that the candidates know they've got to think about closing out then. Again, we ask the audience to please not applaud. We're going to applaud before they start and very much at the end as they leave the room, and then we'll take a short break and then do CD3. But since we're running a bit late, we will get started. The guidelines that they've agreed to are the same as the first. If you weren't here, they're posted out on an easel out there. And if you have questions and want to submit them, there are cards. The people here are vetting them so we don't ask duplicate questions. And we have to close that off in about 15 minutes because I have to filter them in with other questions. We never get to them all. So without further ado, why don't we start with your opening statement?
Sure. So good evening, everyone. My name is Gina Sillitti. I am your New York State Assemblywoman. For those who are listening, I was asked to describe myself. I am wearing a black jacket, a gray blouse, purple skirt. I am Italian-American. I knocked on a door recently and a woman told me I have the map of Italy on my face, so if that gives you an indication of what I look like. I have long black curly hair, which I wear on top of my head. So, again, thank you for hosting this forum. I have been in office for about 1 year and 10 months now. Prior to that, I worked for nearly 20 years in various levels of government. I understand how the process works. I can navigate it. I love this job. I love working for the people. I love identifying problems and looking for solutions. You know, I have delivered for this district since I've come into the office, from securing record school funding to money for infrastructure programs. I humbly ask for your vote this November so I can continue the great work that we have done in the 16th Assembly District. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Jha, your opening statement.
Thank you, everybody, for being here, and I'm delighted and honored to be entering the political arena in America. A short description: I'm big, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, big, bald, and not so beautiful. I came to this country way back in 1991. I was in the senior management role with American Express Bank. I'm from India. I was in corporate banking and private banking over there. And when India was opening up, removing itself from the clutches of socialism, India launched its India Liberalization Program. I call myself very proudly belonging to the band of a few good men who brought the story here to this part of the world. And I organized the first ever Doing Business with India seminar in this country and did many more. And we have done some fabulous joint ventures which have created employment and opportunities on both sides of the aisle. Prior to the American Express, I was with the Reserve Bank of India, which is the counterpart of Federal Reserve System here, in compliance control and in foreign exchange department. I have an enormous business experience. I have dealt with companies and corporations solving problems. And what is my life story? I always keep configuring myself. What have I done? What's today and what's tomorrow? And I came to this conclusion that I'm a problem solver. If you were to define me as an individual, I'm a problem solver. I'm a coach. I'm a consultant, and I solve problems. I have an affiliation. I'm an investor partner in a company, in Seattle-based company, Human Potential Project. We work on turnaround strategies. In that, we have understood that if you have a problem, it can be solved, provided you want to solve it. And as I see it today, as you all know, we have some problems, and they need to be solved. And the traditional element of politics will not work anymore. We need new insights. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay, so Mr. Zhao, you get the first question, which is crime is spiking in Nassau County. Do you believe it's caused by cashless bail laws? What legislative actions will you take to reduce crime in District 16 and throughout New York State?
Thank you. In 1991, when I came here, my director of international HR in American Express told me, always carry $20 in your pocket and wear a cheap watch. If you are accosted and held up, give it away. The element of crime was very big in New York City. It changed dramatically under Mayor Giuliani's rule. I've seen New York City evolve, become a tourist attraction. Important part is that today, as I see this country, crime is on the rise. Today, my heart goes out to the 2 police officers in Connecticut who were ambushed with a bogus 911 call. Think about it. This country ran on a basis of trust and confidence. Somewhere along the line, the criminal intent of people is getting encouraged by a cashless bail system where you have in Long Island, a major department store no longer reports to police that people are stealing things because they don't want a police case happening. Think about it from that perspective. This society is based on trust, confidence, and rule of law. Rule of law doesn't mean gun. Rule of law means discipline. That's what is important to understand. Legislation, I have a few thoughts on that. I'm lucky in the sense that I have not been in the politics before. I'm entering public service because I'm entering this arena because I feel there are things are not okay and they need to be fixed.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So crime is up across our country. Many of the changes that were mentioned here tonight happened before I was elected, but let me tell you what's happened since I've been elected. We've made common sense changes to bail reform. We gave judges more discretion for repeat offenders. Think car thefts, catalytic converters. We added more gun crimes to bail eligible offenses. We made fixes to discovery laws while also giving DAs more money. We've given more money to our state troopers. I've gotten grants for our local police to keep us safe. I know we can prioritize public safety the right way, and law enforcement trusts me to do that. That's why I've received the endorsement of law enforcement in New York, Nassau County PBA, Nassau County detectives, Nassau superior officers, New York state troopers, and the New York Conference of Police. I have the full support of law enforcement. I will be in the room fighting for us. They know that. They know that they can trust me. I hope you will too, and know that I will fight for you and the public safety of everyone in the 16th Assembly District.
Okay, thank you. And now you get the next question, which is long, so listen.
Which is what?
The question is longer than your answer, okay. This past July, New York State Assembly and Senate passed the Equality Amendment. It reads, quote, "No person shall be denied the equal protection of the laws of this state," unquote. And it codifies protections of human rights in New York State, including full access to reproductive care. To amend the New York State Constitution, both chambers need to pass it again next spring, and then it will be sent to voters. First, how will you vote next spring, if elected? In favor or against? And how will you explain or defend your position to your constituency prior to their voting on it as a referendum in November next year?
Sure, happy to answer that question. I voted yes this year, and I plan on voting yes again for the Equality Amendment. This came about particularly with Roe being overturned. 50 years of precedent, 50 years of protecting a woman's right to choose was ended abruptly. New York fought back. One, with measures to protect a woman, protect doctors from retaliation, from criminality, but also the Equality Amendment. Now, I've knocked on doors, I've talked to folks, and they say, why are we worried about Roe? Why are we worried about the Equality Amendment? We're fine here in New York. Well, what I say to them is, you're fine here in New York because you have representatives like me fighting for you. And I will continue to do that, and I will proudly vote yes on the Equality Amendment because I'm unapologetically pro-choice.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Jacques?
Thank you. This is a question which is rather fascinating because it's about freedom, about choice, and varieties of other issues involved. People have a right to marry who they want to marry. But there is something like a God-ordained way. Man is man, woman is woman, and there are in between. But the important part is equality. Roe versus Wade, for that matter. I think the Supreme Court took a wise decision. It may have angered a group of people, but this is a wonderful country with states having the right to choose what they want to do. It is as much unfair for Texas to impose their conditionalities on New York as it is for New York to impose its conditionalities on Wisconsin or Tennessee. There has to be an independent respect for what people of each region want to do. And the issue is not about abortion. The issue is about whether the Constitution talks about this particular right. So people have the right in the New York State. I live here, and it's perfectly fine. It is already coded. Nobody is changing that. So it is perfectly fine to have that element. But equality of marriage, people are free to choose their partners, who they want to live with, because marriage is not about living unhappily ever after. Marriage is about a creative pursuit of happiness, wherever you get it from, whatever is your pursuit of creative happiness. So I'm all for that part, equality. If it comes to that, there is an important thing here. Sorry, I will stop here. I didn't see that.
Okay, and again, I've told the candidates if they want to revisit anything in their closing statement, they can. So, Mr. Jha, you start with the next one. This is a short one.
Okay.
What is your record or your hopes about supporting union labor?
I come from a country that has always been a socialist country until now. And we had various forms of labor unions, very active, very aggressive. I've dealt with them. At the end of the day, labor unions are also people. The enterprise succeeds because people work there. What is important for us to do, the environment that I worked in Reserve Bank of India, they had very powerful unions. You have to reason it out. There is one thing very important for the management to consider, is that if you have the ability to do something right in time, do it. That's one of the nicest way to improve the relationship and trust. It's all about trust and confidence. It's nothing about this legislation or that legislation. The labor and the ownership, they have to work together because both of them have to coexist. There is no way that one can work and one can just have fun. So the point of the matter is, my opinion on the labor union is, yes, they also have to be responsible. You just can't strike work because it's part of your whims and fancies. The demands have to be reasonable, and the attendance to those demands have to be reasonable. So unless and until we drop the extremities, we will never have agreements. And we have done that many times in our work life, that you bring people together in the way that you have common ground.
Thank you. Ms. Sullivan.
Absolutely. So I am a proud member of the Labor Committee in the New York State Assembly. I'm also proud to have the support and the endorsement of nearly every labor union representing New York, Long Island Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO, Nassau Suffolk Building Trades, and the list goes on. This year, we brought record funding to Long Island, record funding for this district in the terms of infrastructure programs. Think repaving Northern Boulevard as one of those. These are projects that are going to bring good paying construction jobs to Long Island, that is going to get people back to work and raise the middle class. So I am a supporter of labor. I'm a supporter of the labor movement. They have built this country, built America, and they always have my back and I'll have theirs.
Thank you. And I'm going to add a 30-second question on that for both of you. So what do you think the minimum wage should be? You first.
Me first. So I can give you a quick story, if that's okay. I mean, very short amount of time.
Very short.
Recently, there's a group of cleaning workers. They're members of 32BJ. They may be losing their job. And all because they negotiated just 50 cents more an hour. This is a part-time job for them. It's an after-work job. And all they want to do is have dignity in the workplace and a job that they could be proud of. It's not enough. It's not enough to make ends meet, certainly on Long Island. But at the same time, we have to work with, businesses are struggling at the same time. But we've seen that there's a labor shortage. Part of that has to do with the fact that the wages are just too low. And I'm in favor of increasing the wage.
So let me just make sure. The question was, what would be the minimum wage that is that
The
it?
question was, what do you think the minimum wage should be?
I don't use the word should be, because should be is the most dangerous word in English language, because so many things should be, but they are not. The reality of the situation here is very important. There is nothing like a should be. It is a negotiated thing. How profitable the business is, that much they are able to part with it. So this is an issue that in management and labor have to determine what is the cost and what is the price one pays. And that's what you have to determine, what is the negotiated settlement for the wage structure that is, which is more than subsistence levels. So in the environment that I have worked, there was a pay scale in India. We had a government pay scale. This is the employment scale you get into, and that's all that was there for you. When I joined American Express, I negotiated my package. And then you perform to that package. So it is a mutually accepted situation. Should be is a dangerous word. I don't like to go into the hypotheticals, but we need to understand the basic premise of that. If McDonald's cannot afford, a McDonald's franchise cannot afford X amount of money, to them, if you tell them to pay more than $20, it is impossible. They will not survive. But somebody has lower cost of operations, they may be able to pay 20. So that's what is important to determine how profitable the business is. That's what will make things happen. And we need that negotiated decision.
Okay, thank you. The next question, we continue, Mr. Jha. And the American Academy of Pediatrics is a partner in with us to give us some questions about children's health. So this one is, Congress provided to all students across New York State free lunch through the pandemic, and it ended in September. Inflation has been hard on family food budgets. Universal free lunch reduces stigma and supports all children having access to a healthy meal without identifying them as from a poor family. New York City already does this, but the rest of the state does not. Would you support it? Why or why not?
The thing's free is a bothersome thing, because whenever something is free, somebody is paying for it. Let's be very clear on that element. Nothing is free. Air is free, yes. Water is free, yes. God-given items. But we make money out of water selling now. But some days, in a very short time, somebody will market oxygen and make money out of that. What I'm trying to say here is, beware of those who tell you things doing for free, because somebody is paying for it. But I do agree, extraordinary times, extraordinary measures. Yes, COVID was an extraordinary time. And therefore, if the government felt that it had the surplus in the budget to pay for it, good for the community. So I am of the opinion that extremism or extremist viewpoints are dangerous for the community life. Because extremes never bring us to a solution. Extremes drive us to extremity, a point of no return. And that's what is important for us to be aware of, that if something needs to be done, where is that money coming from? Once we make that determination, it becomes easier to do things. Like you said earlier on in the civil discourse, but we hope we are able to maintain a civil discourse, but we know Republicans are called deplorables, evil, extremists. Do you think I look such a person to you? That's my question. Am I such an extremist? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Sillitti.
Sure. So the answer would be yes to your question. I would be very okay with paying for a child's food. I understand the stigma surrounding walking up with that piece of paper, knowing that they know that you have a free or reduced lunch. And we saw during the pandemic that it didn't care what zip code you lived in. It struck us. It didn't matter who you were. It was the children were in need. Whether you're rich or you're poor, people lost their job and children needed to eat. So I like what the city does. We should be doing it everywhere. We shouldn't have to pay for kids. The children shouldn't have to pay for their food. 100%.
Okay, thank you. And we continue with you on the next question. To what extent do you believe parental rights are being undermined by New York State legislative and budget actions, particularly in education? What legislative action would you support or oppose to restore parental rights?
Sure. If you are referring to vaccines, books, curriculum, the schools are generally in charge of their curriculum. I have not voted for anything that would take parental rights away, but there are certain things that we mandate in New York that should be taught. For example, Holocaust education. That is something that is mandated in New York that our children should be taught. That would be something that I would believe should continue. But I understand that there are certain, issues that parents have concerns about, what if their children are receiving in public school. I have been incredibly open to my constituents, whether we agree or not on this issue. I have met with people from vaccines to books to everything in between. I've heard their concerns, I've listened to them, and I told them that there are, things that we need to do from a public health standpoint, but there wouldn't be, for example, polio vaccine, because, I have a feeling this is leading towards, this is a vaccine question. There are a lot of kids that are, 70% of people are vaccinated with polio. And we see a resurgence of polio. This is a disease that has literally been eradicated and is now back. This is something to keep our community safe. So in that regard, that would be something that I am supportive of mandating.
Thank you. Mr. Jha?
And it already is. P.S.
Thank you. Let me put it this way to you. Parents, there is no substitute for children than parents. Parental right has to be the uppermost for a child. It is absolutely essential that we do not do anything that disrupts parental right to look after their children. I believe, and I'm confirmed with my belief, there are only two entities in the universe that think about their children for totally unselfish reasons. They are father and mother. These are the two people who mean well to kids, that they do well in life, they are successful, nothing evil happens to them, they are healthy, and they do well. That's all I expect from my child. Do well. That's it. I have no expectation that he will look after me in my old age. What is happening in this country right now is a total degradation of the family values. There was a time, there is a statistics, that there was a time when children born out of wedlock was only 10%. Today it is more than 50%. Think about it like this. When children go through one parent, the other side is missing. There's a funny anecdote here. My son was till 11 years of age, it was all mom all the way. It was all mom all the way. There came a day I was going for a walk, and he says, "Dad, I'm coming for a walk with you." And my wife said, "All this time it was mom, now what, Dad?" He says, "It's the guy thing, I'll tell you later." So there are things that change, and we have to remember that part. Parental rights is supreme.
Thank you. Ms. Sillitti. Right, okay. Next question starts with Mr. Jha again.
Okay.
Okay. A national state of emergency in children's mental health was declared by medical groups last year. How would you work to ensure equitable access to children's mental health services in pediatric offices, clinics, and school health sites?
If children are the future of the country, it is important that they're in every single aspect they are attended to, and they are supported in every single way. It begins from the family. And what is important here is that they need to be attended to. Their exposure, I'll give you one very important example. My son was in 5th grade in California when we came here, and that probably will explain my thought on it. He came to me and said, I'm required to vote and give my opinion on Clarence Thomas and Anita Hill's case. I said, what is that? It was a famous case that I came to know about that later. I went to the school teacher, I said, these guys, you don't even know what sex is, and you are asking them to vote and express an opinion on sexual abuse? He said, you are coming from a different cultural background, so you don't get it, but our children know everything. I was astonished. I said, you are talking to a guy whose country gave the world Kama Sutra. So don't tell me about that. So it is important for you to know that there is a time for everything, right? Just because you attain puberty doesn't mean you start doing whatever is allowed for you to do. Responsibility is there. Children in this country are under severe duress, and we as parents have to get involved. I have handled this matter with my son growing up here. This is not a 2-minute question or 2-minute answer, but I want to say children need mental support, busting their stress levels, putting them under undue pressure on their sexuality, on what they are taught, must stop.
Thank you. Ms. Sillitti.
I feel like I forgot what the question was. Mental health, our children.
Children's mental health.
So there are 2 bills that are out there currently that address this very subject, and that would bring psychologists and mental health professionals in every single school. These kids before COVID were already on the edge. They were barely getting the services that they needed to get by. And then COVID came, we sent them home, and we put them in a room, and they couldn't get the services that they needed, and they were desperate, and they're desperate for help. I support those 2 bills. I hope we can get them passed next year. One thing that one school is doing, and not to single out any school district, but I went and I saw it and I got a tour of it, it was incredible. The Manhasset School District, we're very lucky where we live. Our schools are incredible. Not everybody is so lucky, but the Manhasset School District, in their secondary school, they have this wellness center, and they have resources for the kids. Or if they just want to go and sit, they have these like giant donuts where the kids can go and just relax and be and think and just be children, because at the end of the day, that's what we just want them to be. And it's a model. I think it's a model that other schools should follow. It's a model that I think will really help our children. And if I could be helpful in any way in our other school districts to make that happen, I will.
Okay, thank you. Also for you, the next question. What do you think New York State should do in light of the recent Dobbs decision to protect abortion and reproductive rights for all within this state?
Right. So I think we sort of touched on that a little bit before. Obviously that decision for me personally was devastating. I felt like my personal rights as a woman were under attack. But again, as I mentioned before, people have said, well, we're safe here in New York because we have, legislation to protect us. But at the end of the day, you have this legislation because you have representatives that believe in a woman's right to choose, that are passing these bills that will protect you and protect your right to choose. But a couple of things that we've done, I mentioned it, there was legislative measures that we passed immediately following that decision. It was a series of measures that protected doctors and healthcare providers from retaliation, which I thought was important because women are going to be coming here from other states, states that are banning abortion outright, that have outright bans in even the most extreme cases, rape, incest, and the health of the mother. They don't care, but they come to New York because they know that they'll be protected here. And as long as I'm an elected official, you'll have that protection.
Thank you. Mr. Shah?
If I understood the question correctly, it is about the Roe versus Wade and abortion rights. Am I correct?
Well, what do you think New York should do, New York State? Because this is...
New York has already codified the entire process, so people living here have no issues. So that particular thing is a different issue. But there are I have an ethical and moral dilemma with that. And it is a very interesting number, which you must bear in mind. 3,000 people lost their lives in 9/11 tragedy. And very rightfully so, we have a memorial for them. Are we aware of the fact that more than approximately 3,000 children die every day because people take a decision? 86% of the abortions are done for casual reasons. I'm thinking about it. Since 1973, 60 million children have not seen their adult life or any life. How fair was life on them? How fair were we with them? This is important. This is also a dilemma of risk and responsibility. There was a time when people did not know, they did not have the methodologies to protect themselves for unwanted pregnancies. I call upon people to also be cognizant of this fact. Educate children that you're indulging in an act has consequences, because everything that we do has a consequence and impact of that. Let's be careful about educating them, the responsibility factor. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sillitti? Okay. Last question, and then we'll go to the close.
Oh, boy.
Okay. So, Mr. Jha.
Yes.
Are you concerned about the rise of extremism in New York? And what do you think should be done to address it? And I'll use that word extremism in a very loose way. You can take this how you wish.
Yeah. I come from a country where we have seen extreme violence on account of ideology or insistences or my way or highway. I've seen the violence over there. This country is peaceful. We are fortunate to be living here. But I see, since 1991 I have been here, I've seen political polarization going on. It's my way or highway. I don't belong to any extreme. I'm an independent guy smack in the middle, leaning to the right, because there is a need for law and order, discipline, because that's when things happen. I lost 50 pounds because I followed a discipline. I didn't have a tablet to sleep overnight and then lose my weight. The point is that life needs discipline. Then things happen. Today we are looking at extremism in the country because we are restricting freedom of speech. It's a very interesting dichotomy. In the name of freedom of speech, your and my freedom of speech is being restricted. That's the risk this country is running. Freedom of speech is about what, who, why, when, how, and where happen. That's what it is. If that was not the case, if we did not have the freedom to make an inquiry, ask a question, how will we move forward? That's why you are seeing extremism. People are pushing their agenda, my way or highway, you are wrong, I'm right. That must stop.
So I'm so glad that we brought up freedom of speech, because one of the freedoms that we have in this country to express our speech is at the voting booth. And I feel that that right is under assault by the extremes. January 6th, we saw people who didn't believe in a free and fair election storm our Capitol. Now, do we have those extremisms in New York? Perhaps. Do we have poll workers that are afraid to go to work, to the basics of, our elections? Yes. And that shouldn't be. I believe voting in New York should be easier, not harder. I believe that people should be able to go to the voting booth without fear of being attacked or vilified or intimidated. Misinformation is feeding the extremism. Misinformation about voting, misinformation on every subject, from from COVID all the way down. And I think that's the biggest problem in our country, is the misinformation that it's feeding the extremism. And, as Mr. Jha pointed out, there is extremism on both sides, but one side is not trying to undermine our democracy and overturning free and fair elections.
Okay, thank you. And now you'll have 2 minutes each for a closing
Oh,
statement.
we're at the closing already.
Yes, yes. So, Ms. Sillitti, you close first, and then Mr. Jha.
Sure. So I just want to say very quickly that this has been a pleasure. This is my first time doing this with you all, so I've really enjoyed it. I grew up actually in a single-parent household. My mom did the best that she could to raise me and the values that I hold dear. My father passed away when I was very young. You have met two very different candidates tonight. Both have very, mutual respect for each other, but we both believe in different things. And everybody in this room, we may not always agree on every single issue. But at the end of the day, who do you trust on the issues that matter to you? Women's rights, voting rights, the environment, guns, public safety. I hope that you will trust me to be your voice and fight for you in Albany. I've received the endorsement from law enforcement, to environmental groups, to labor, to business council, everybody in between. They trust me to get the job done. Newsday in their recent endorsement said that I'm laser focused on constituent issues, and I believe that. I believe that I've delivered money for IDA funding, to infrastructure, sewer project, and I'm just getting started. I hope that I can count on your support in November. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Jha.
Thank you, Gina, for being civil with me. It is very important to have a civilized conversation, not calling each other extreme and violent, deplorable. So I'm lucky. Thank you. That said, with me, what you get is what you see here. I'm a solution provider. I have found solutions to the problem every single time. And believe me, a Seattle-based company wanted to install a performance-based culture in their company, billion-dollar company. They needed to cut costs. We brought senior managers, 250 senior managers in a hall, and we solved the cost-cutting problem for them. They saved $7 million a year of cost without even having to take permission from anybody. I'm lucky that I'm not in politics so that I don't have to prove my credentials to you, but this is what is important for us to know. What are we looking for? Where are we today? Look at the gas prices. Look at the inflation. Look at the problem. This is my problem with Democratic Party is they aggravate the problem, make it worse, then they put a Band-Aid and they say, voila, it is solved. We fixed it. So gas prices went up to $6, came to $4, and President Biden is claiming credit for that. Hey, you put it up from there, from $1.50 or $2 to $6. So today we are printing notes and sending money and weapons to Ukraine. Nobody is thinking about the solution. People are supplying weapons to Ukraine. That country is doomed. We are supplying weapons to Ukraine, but nobody is solving the problem of Ukraine. This is ladies and gentlemen, we need a novel look at the problem. Do we want the solution? If we want the solution, we have to give up the traditional politics that is going on here. And my appeal to you is, endorsement Gina has got, congratulations. But it doesn't mean a thing. They didn't know me. That's all that is there. Once they know me, they will endorse me next time. I'm 100% sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.